views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Fashionistas Home Edition. I am your host, Fleriser Bello. It is a pleasure to have you join us on this beautiful afternoon. We trust that you and your loved ones are well and staying safe. In today's Bello's Fireside Chat conversation, we welcome the president and co-founder of Latina Search National. Latina Search National's vision is to help women realize their self-empowerment by searching and rewarding leading entities that exemplify best-in-class practices of inclusion, belonging, and corporate social responsibility. Please join me in welcoming Latina Trailblazer and Peruana Elisa Charters. Elisa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I can't wait to have this awesome conversation today.
It is a pleasure to have you at Bello's Fashionistas TV. Elisa, please share with us more about yourself and what it is that you do.
I am an advocate for diversity and inclusion. I have been in this space for a good 20 to 25 years, especially advocating for the Latinx community. Most of that experience has been in New York and New Jersey. And I represented multiple Latinx organizations, whether they were governmental, statewide, nonprofits, also non-Latino nonprofits serving communities of color, serving underserved children and women, like the Junior League of Montclair, Newark. And I've always just had a passion. I've been a president of an ERG affinity group for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. It was called the Port Authority Hispanic Society. And that was early on. That was about 15 plus years ago. And that gave me a lot of entree into the space and a lot of training to address disparities in the bi-state region.
Tell us more about the creation of that ERG and how that has led you to create Latina Search and Latina Search National.
Basically, in that agency, at that time, there were about 8,000 employees. So we would look at the data about all the employees and where they were situated throughout the agency to find out how many were represented as administrative staff, how many were professional staff, how many were in operations, what levels were they, anywhere from like lower level management to C-suite. And wherever there were gaps, we addressed them. Now, again, this was an ERG affinity group back 15, almost 20 years ago, when that didn't really exist. It was sort of like pioneering that ground. And even C-suite diversity councils were not something that was known. We were just an affinity group that realized that there were disparities, and we wanted to bring these to the C-suite to get something done about it. But that has progressed now into formalized bodies, which are now these diversity and inclusion councils and these diversity and inclusion affinity groups. So that experience really shaped what was to come in the future. And what it just made me realize was, while that was a snapshot internally of the agency, what was happening outside the agency in other government entities? And how were the governors of New York and New Jersey really ensuring that there was appropriate representation of Latinos across different agencies, authorities? And so that's what I started looking at as part of other nonprofits in the state of New Jersey and the state of New York to identify where those gaps were. And we would actually have meetings with the governor's offices to talk about those gaps and how they were going to proceed in filling them to ensure that there was inclusive viewpoints on policy decision making and obviously for better community outcomes. Now, fast forwarding all of that experience, I realized quickly that unfortunately the Latino community becomes a political football. We see it today. We see it right now with what's happening in politics. And without even getting into the political landscape of what's happening, I just felt like I needed to do more for our community. I just couldn't accept that if you sided with one party, then your community was out of luck for the next 4 years and wouldn't get much attention if you didn't support that particular person that won, or that party that won. And the same would hold true if you supported the other party and, you know, it didn't win. So we just felt like the Latino community was this political football. And at the end of the day, we were getting the short end of the stick. None of our needs in the community, whether we talked about education, healthcare, economic opportunities, supplier diversity, immigration, many of these issues were not getting the attention they needed. And so finally I decided, okay, I'm starting from scratch. I want to start a new organization that focuses specifically on the issues. And thankfully I had two highly educated cousins, Annie and Lisa Salas. Lisa Salas was a retired financial executive from Colgate-Palmolive. And her sister, Annie Salas, was one of the lead producers for MTV Latino and for Nickelodeon. And so when they heard about all that I was doing on the government side, they said, why aren't you doing this on the private side in terms of like corporations? And I said, well, we can do this. And they said, let's do it together. So 6 years ago, we started Latina Surge. And the whole idea of Latina Surge, why surge? Why the word surge? It's so strange, right? It's because we wanted to teach women, especially Latino women, that we can self-empower with our purchasing power and our decision-making power. We can reward companies that walk the talk and do best practices with relation to diversity and inclusion as it supports us as a Latina, Latinx community. And so that's why we had the term Surge to Reward, Latina Surge. And in addition to teaching about the awareness of data and information about what abysmal performance there is out there when it comes to the inclusion of Latinas, whether it's paying us equivalently or giving us access to supplier diversity and contracts, whether it's on the government side or corporate side, we would bring that awareness about because that's the first point, the education and the awareness. And then we teach women how to self-empower with that information, taking that information and utilizing it in a very proactive, productive way to help us further be self-empowered and reach our social and professional goals.
What are the programs and services Latina Surge provides?
Well, we have multiple campaigns. Over the last 6 years, we've partnered with the Lean In organization, which does an annual study called the Women in the Workplace Study with McKinsey, which is a well-respected consultation firm. And actually, they just released a new report, the 2020 Women in the Workplace report. And every year they do a comparison of this report to see where we as women and we as women of color fall in terms of equal pay. So many of the campaigns that we've focused on have been equal pay campaigns. We've also done gender parity types of campaigns like He for She, Balance for Better, where we've actually gone into companies and helped train different personnel in the company to work as allies in support of their management teams to ensure that the contributions that we have as professionals that we put on the table in these meetings, sometimes as the only Latina in the room, making sure that they get recognition, making sure that we get credit for the ideas that we bring to the table, and that someone else doesn't repeat our idea and nobody, our idea falls short when we mention it, but when someone else mentions our idea as theirs, they wind up getting credit for it. And there's a lot of research and data that goes behind why those strategies are so important for our allies and our managers or our superiors in the workplace, making sure that they recognize this, address this for our empowerment in the company. Because guess what? If they don't do this proactively, we don't feel like we belong. We don't feel included. We feel disenfranchised, and we leave. And that's bad for companies. They need to retain diverse individuals, diverse thinking to stay competitive and to have competitive advantage. So that's another type of campaign. Most recently, we did our 10,000 Mamacitas campaign, and that was a campaign to do outreach to at least 10,000 individuals in the New York, New Jersey region, and to talk about the disparities that exist and that have been amplified by COVID and the pandemic. As women, we've had to juggle so much with homeschooling, keeping our jobs. How are we supposed to be teaching our children while they're on these virtual programs? How are we supposed to manage our workloads virtually, simultaneously? How are we supposed to cook and clean? How are we supposed to take care of our elders? We have tons of stuff on our shoulders. And a lot of the disparities that already existed were getting amplified by this pandemic scenario. So we partnered with over 100 women's empowerment organizations led by Power Her New York. And we have used that campaign to really voice what those critical issues are for our BIPOC community and our Latinx community.
Those topics are very important, especially now. And I could only imagine looking at myself when I was younger, way younger, working in corporate America and being one of those Latinas that ended up having that type of experience. And even as a business owner, having those type of experience to gain new clients or land a new project. So it's very slim. These type of issues that anyone across the board, it doesn't matter if they're an executive level, it doesn't matter if they're entrepreneurs, it happens across the board with any Latina. And those are very important topics. And I'm so glad that Latina Search has been able to do that.
I want to go back to your point that you just made, which is so critical. You were in corporate, you just said, and now you're in your own business. And guess what? That's a major trend for Latinas, because Latinas, we have been paid almost 50% less than our counterparts in corporate America across all different industries. How is it possible that we're doing the same jobs, being equally qualified, having similar education, and yet getting paid almost 50% less? So that disenfranchised us, and it has done that over the years. And what have we done? We've left corporate America, and we've started to our own businesses as entrepreneurs and as business owners, because we wanted to self-empower and make a better decision for ourselves, for wealth generation for ourselves. We self-empowered to do this. Mm-hmm. And the issue is that we still need allyship, because these corporations and government need to realize that they need to support us in the supply chain. We still have less than 3% access to Fortune 100 companies in terms of supplier diversity. How can that be when we are the growing demographic of Latina entrepreneurs and business owners supplying products and services, and yet we have less than 3% of that market share across all of those companies? So there are still a lot of hurdles to jump over, but we are going to be able to do this together. And now's the perfect time to do it, because the spotlight is on women and women of color.
What is the age range Latina Search works with? I understand that you run workshops and other programs in high schools, colleges. Tell us more about that you do in the corporate ladder and also in the college level.
We're very, very involved across the board for all generations. Obviously, the youngest generation, we have partnered to help children get books, young children in primary school, secondary school. In high school, we really tried to build that awareness of self-empowerment. And we talk about these issues of pay early on before they get to college, because we want them to understand that they should be negotiating for themselves right off the bat. Any first job that they have, they should negotiate their pay. So we really try to bring about that awareness early on, and to also talk about mentorship and sponsorship and looking for support services to help them self-empower. And then in college, we talk a lot about equal pay and making sure that young women and young Latinas know what their value is, what resources to go to establish a baseline, who to talk with about whatever market they're going into, whatever sector they're going into, to know exactly what the baseline pay should be as they're approaching a job. But not only that, there might be some kind of floor that exists, but giving them the self-confidence to understand why they should negotiate for more, how they can position themselves to negotiate for more, what makes them unique, and why that's an asset to an employer. And then also the psychology behind negotiations. We talk a lot about that as well. While men typically will negotiate for something that they can achieve to, meaning maybe their value is only $50,000 or $70,000, but they will actually negotiate up and say, I'm worth $100,000 because in that job, I know I'll be able to achieve this, that, and the other once I'm in the job. Whereas women tend to be a little bit more critical of themselves, especially Latinas, not necessarily using their voice boxes to promote themselves. It's a cultural thing that we want them to get over, but also just don't think about what you've done yesterday as per what your experience is at this very moment. You have to think like men do too. Where can you be in 3 months, 6 months, a year from now once you get that experience? We're trying to help them frame themselves in a different position so that they have the confidence to negotiate themselves forward.
We will take a quick break, and when we return, Ms. Charters will discuss how Latina Search National has been paving the way for the advancement of multi-generational of Latinas across the United States, and will provide insights relating to the pay gap affecting Latinas. Don't go anywhere.
TV news, radio reports, and newspaper headlines in the 1970s and 80s misrepresented communities in the borough of the Bronx. Then, something transformative happened. By, for, and about the Bronx, BronxNet was born.
We are BronxNet!
BronxNet provides media education,
opening the doors to competitive careers in the media industry
for thousands of students in middle school,
high school,
and college. BronxNet.
Welcome back. Ms. Charters, please share with us how Latina Search National has been paving the way for the advancement of the multi-generational of Latinas across the United States.
We help multiple generations of Latinas through the various programs that we do. We do programs with high school students, we do programs with college students, we focus on equal pay, we focus on negotiation skills, confidence building, awareness, understanding where to go, what resources to use for the data, so that they understand where these disparities exist. And then in terms of other generations of women who may already be like in middle management or executive management, we host different types of training programs that focus on their development within the higher levels of corporate America, like C-suite training, what you need to know and learn to run a board, be a board member, your responsibilities, your fiduciary responsibilities, your administrative responsibilities, and then obviously with management and management styles, leadership styles, and then navigating within the whole context of being the only Latina in the room. So we have training across multiple platforms for multiple generations. And I would also add that we do training that extends beyond the Latina community, obviously to women of color and white women, but also to allies, and in terms of what they can do to be more inclusive and to explain how they can further promote and further support women of color in the workplace.
As we move closer to Latina Equal Pay Day, this year is on October 29. Please share with us, Elisa, what is Latina Equal Pay Day and how this continues to affect Latinas today?
It's pretty amazing. Even after 6 years of talking about equal pay with various community members and professionals, and highly educated professionals at the same rate, it's amazing how many women still don't realize that they're not being paid equivalently. And so, when we talk about the differential in pay on average, it used to be about 20%. Now it's a little bit more narrow. It's about 18% differential in pay for all women as compared to what white men make, doing the same job, same level of experience, same education level. But when we slice out different ethnic groups or racial groups, then the disparities get wider and wider. And so in 2020, as we speak, there is a 45% differential in pay for Latinas across all industries. So that means that if we took 2 accounting majors from college, same college, they get an offer from an accounting firm. White male gets an offer for $100,000. The Latina gets an offer for $50,000. They work all of 2020, and she makes $50,000. She has to work until October 29th of 2021 in order to make up that whole $100,000. So she has to almost work 2 years to make the same amount of money in the same exact job that the white male coworker counterpart worked 1 year for and made $100,000. Now, why does that also matter? Because that matters in the long run for wealth generation. So we're not just talking about what she makes today and that differential in pay. How does she has $50,000 less to invest towards her wealth generation? So exponentially, if you take that value over a 20-year period and you compound it with lost opportunities of investment, we're on average that actually works out to close to $1 million of lost wealth. Not only that, let's just say she decided not to invest in trying to grow those funds. Instead, she wanted to invest in her education. That sets her back. She has to save that much longer or take out loans and get set back on different interest rates, her car payments, the interest that goes along with that, different things that she needs in her life. If she doesn't have the funds to pay for it, she has to borrow. Borrowing sets her back. But not only that, her education gets set back because she can't pay for it and maybe even go to school full-time for an MBA to knock it out. She has to wait and save because she makes less. So there's a compounding element here, not just financially, but socially for her advancement. So it's critical for women to understand the impacts of a pay gap.
What is the differential pay gap for Latinas? And how does this differ with other women of different ethnic backgrounds, such as the Caucasian, the African American, the Asian, and the Native American?
Okay, let me just tell you across the board, for Asian women compared to white males, when you compare, again, these are averages across multiple industries. This is not just one industry. There is a 10% differential in pay for Asian women. For white women, there's a 21% differential in pay. For Black women, there's a 38% differential in pay. For Native American women, there's a 43% differential in pay. For Latinas, there's a 45% differential in pay. That's 2020 numbers. Okay, and then when you go into certain sectors and you compare Latinas directly to white men, especially in different parts of their lives, we were just talking about generational differences. Well, when a girl gets out of high school and a young boy gets out of high school, a white male gets out of high school, there's a 25% differential pay gap right out of high school. When they go to college, there becomes a 32% differential gap. The gap starts to get wider. And after getting a bachelor's degree, there's a 37% differential in that time frame. So if that's why it's so important to have these programs, and Latina Surge is so actively involved in talking to girls in high school and setting the tone and getting them ready early on so that they can develop their negotiation skills. They know where the data is, they know the awareness, they know who to talk to about, hey, I want to become an accountant. What does an accountant make every year? They'll know who to talk to, and then they'll know how to go in and negotiate. And so often, too often, women don't negotiate for themselves. Many times, men and white males will be offered a salary in their first job, and they say, no, thanks, but I have another offer. If you want to bump that up by 20,000, I'll take the job. And they negotiate themselves up, and they've already set themselves up for future wealth generation. Latinas, there's cultural reasons behind this, but Latinas are offered $50,000 or $55,000 as their base pay, and they say, thank you very much, when can I start?
Why is that?
It's cultural. We don't like to challenge. We don't like to talk to others unless they speak to us. It's a cultural thing. The other reason is culturally, we are a society that takes care of our elders. We take care of our family members. How often do we have to take our salaries and help our parents with their expenses, whether they're medical expenses, household expenses? So often we as Latinos, we have to give half our check away up to or across to family members. It's an expected cultural thing. And when someone offers us $55,000 for that job, we don't have the luxury because we have the fear. If we negotiate, they're going to take the offer away. And how am I going to provide for my family? How am I going to be the caretaker that my family members are looking for? I'm the first to go to college. I'm the one who made it. I'm the one who's out there in corporate America. They're now looking to me to help them. But if I don't take this offer that's right here on the table, I'm not going to be able to provide. So there's a lot more pressure on me than someone else has. And so we have to make sure that other Latinas realize that don't let that be a block to your future wealth.
How can we collectively mobilize in bringing awareness about the issue of Latina equal pay that affects all of us?
Well, we have to talk about it. We have to support each other in these conversations. We cannot be sort of hearing the information and then just keeping it to ourselves. We need to take that information and share it with our mothers, with our cousins, with our sisters, with our children. My daughter is a rising senior in high school. I'm talking to her about this all the time. My husband works in corporate America. He manages lots of people. I talk to him all the time and say, are you making sure that you are, you have a diversity lens, that you make sure you're giving opportunities to everyone, that you're taking in all of these different ideas and effectuating change. And I talk with other people in corporate America about that too. So we as Latinas need to talk about it among ourselves, among our family members, among our friends, our peers, our colleagues. And we must, we're very good at digital marketing. We are all really good as a society. We're the highest using mobile phone users. We're digitally savvy. So we need to use that digital intelligence and communicate this information so that anytime we have a cousin, a friend, a colleague who's thinking about, taking on a new job, or someone who's just leaving college, we have to make sure that they're aware of the information and also have the skills and the tools to negotiate themselves, to achieve wealth generation.
For more information about the Latina Surge, where can you be contacted?
We are on all social media platforms. Just type in @Latina Surge, SURGE. And we're on LinkedIn. We have a website. You can go to our website. It's latinasurge.org. And you can see all of the different types of events that we've been involved with. And the one thing that has made Latina Surge so exciting and an opportunity for continued growth is because we are open to different ideas. When a Latina comes to the table and says, and even a non-Latina comes to the table and says, we have this idea about effectuating greater change towards empowerment for communities of color and multicultural women, we say, okay, what's the idea? How do we support it? Let's do it. So we're very open and very malleable, and that's why we have so many partnerships across so many different types of entities, whether it be high schools or the United States Securities Exchange Commission, government, governors, mayors, corporate leaders, university presidents. We're involved in all different aspects because, again, diversity, equity, and inclusion is thread through everything we do. And corporate social responsibility is so key right now that there's just so much opportunity to create change for the betterment of everyone in our country and society.
How does one become a member for Latina Surge National and locally?
Go to our website. It's latinasurge.org. You can join us that way. We do not charge. We're a free organization. Everything we do is really to support our communities of color, and we're on every social media platform: Facebook, Instagram, @LatinaSurge, LinkedIn, Twitter. We're there.
Thank you for joining us, Elisa. It has been a pleasure to have you at Bello's Fashionistas TV. Thank you for the advocacy and for creating this platform that brings awareness to Latinas across the board.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media at Bellas Fashionistas TV and our media partner at BronxNet TV. To watch more of the programming, please visit our website at bellasfashionistas.com and our media partner at bronxnet.org. Please be safe. Have a great day.